The stuff that's happening in tech at the moment is a reflection of the downturn in the economy. And many of the things that he alludes to in his letter are very pertinent to a construction company in terms of how it's operated. But also, I wanted to go through this letter because this is an opportunity for you to think through when there are layoffs on the table, as there may well be for your company at some point in the future. How are you going to go through that process? Okay. So that is the motivation behind today's feed. What we're going to do is I'm just going to read the letter and comment on the letter as we go. So let's kick it off. Today, I'm sharing some of the most difficult changes we've made in Meta's history. I've decided to reduce the size of our team by about 13% and let more than 11,000 of our talented employees go. We are also taking a number of additional steps to become leaner and more efficient company by cutting discretionary spending and extending our hiring freeze through Q1. Okay, so he gets right to the point here. And I think that's very important to do whenever you're doing layoffs. You don't want to beat around the bush, whether it's in person, one-on-one, whether it is a mass layoff like this, which requires this type of letter, particularly not only internally, but also externally for shareholders. I know many of you who are watching this, you may not be at that point in terms of the size of your company, but the point is this: he's getting straight to the point. Next paragraph. I want to take accountability for these decisions and for how we got here. I know this is tough for everyone, and I'm especially sorry to those impacted. Now, this letter is not only for people internally, but it's also for people externally. And the vibe that I get as I go through this letter really is it's kind of impersonal in many ways, and perhaps that's a reflection of Zuckerberg himself. I don't know the guy. But in many ways, it's kind of an impersonal letter, but it does go through a number of different things that I want to cover here in the live stream. And there's four main things that he covers in the rest of the letter. How did we get here? How will this work? What other changes are we making? How do we move forward? Now, think about that outline as we go through this letter. How did we get here? How will this work? What other changes are we making? How do we move forward? So let's continue on here. How did we get here? At the start of COVID, the world rapidly moved online, and the surge of e-commerce led to outsized revenue growth. Many people predicted this would be a permanent acceleration that would continue even after the pandemic ended. So we all know how the pandemic affected the economy in various ways. Now, in construction, you'll all remember, right? The economy dipped March, April, May, and then it seemed just to pick up. We did an awesome job doing the right lobbying, making sure that construction was seen as an essential service, and off we went, and we kept going, okay? All right. So again, back to the letter. Many people predicted that this would be a permanent acceleration that would continue even after the pandemic ended. Okay, so the pandemic led to accelerated growth for Facebook because many people were at the house on Facebook. So therefore, Facebook could sell ads. And as a result of selling ads, revenue grew, all that kind of stuff. And by the way, let's just remember what Facebook is all about. At the core of their business, it's all about selling ads. So back to the letter. Many people predicted this would be a permanent acceleration that would continue even after the pandemic ended. I did too. So I made the decision to significantly increase our investments. Notice how he's taking personal responsibility. In other words, he thought that the growth would continue, so he began to spend money. Unfortunately, this did not play out the way I expected. Not only has online commerce returned to prior trends, but the macroeconomic downturn, increased competition, and ads signal loss have caused our revenue to be much lower than I had expected. I got this wrong, and I take responsibility for that. Now, listen, think about this. Your business, for good or for ill, is where it is to a great extent because of the decisions that you make as a company leader. And what's interesting about what Zuckerberg is saying here is very specific. We are where we are because of the bad decisions I made, which at the time I thought were good decisions. And this happens to all of us, right? We make decisions all of the time, And most of the time, we are doing what's right in our own eyes. We are making what we think are the right decisions. And yet, the consequences of those decisions and things outside of our control many times tell us and show us that those were, in fact, the wrong decisions. Okay, back to the letter. Just reflect real quick. What are some decisions that you've made recently that as you reflect on those decisions now, they are the wrong ones? What leaders do is they know when they've made a wrong decision. They have ways of figuring that out as quickly as possible, and then they change those decisions. That is good leaders. Bad leaders double down on bad decisions, insist that they're right, even when things in the environment are telling them that they're wrong. Good leaders understand when they're wrong and make changes as quickly as possible. All right, back to the letter. In this new environment, we need to become more capital efficient. That means stop spending money. We've shifted more of our resources onto a smaller number of high priority growth areas, like our AI discovery engine, our ads and business platforms, and our long-term vision for the metaverse. The long-term vision of the metaverse. Okay, I don't know about you, but I have no interest in walking around with some big Google goggle thing on my head, enjoying the metaverse. I spend enough time online. I'd like to go for a walk. We've cut costs across our business, including scaling back budgets, reducing perks, and shrinking our real estate footprint. In other words, what are they doing? Lowering their overhead. And this is one of the things that we see when times are good, right? Overhead just begins to get bloated. And you, as a construction company, owning that overhead. Frankly, what you should always be doing is being very disciplined in your overhead spending, because if you are, then that helps you to retain cash. And when you retain cash, you're much stronger when the economic downturns occur. We're restructuring teams to increase our efficiency, but these measures alone won't bring our expenses in line with our revenue growth. So I've made the hard decision to let people go. So no more blowing money on dumb stuff. And they're really beginning to focus on what makes them money. And what's that? They're ads. They are an ad company. And having cut in a variety of extraneous areas, they're still left with people, and people in many cases are the largest overhead. So that's how they're going to move forward, cutting overhead. Okay. Now, so how do we get here? Now he goes on to how will this work? I'm not going to spend too much time on this part of it. He says there's no good way to do a layoff, but we hope to get all the relevant information to you as quickly as possible and then do whatever we can to support you through this. Fair enough. Everyone will get an email soon letting you know what this layoff means for you. After that, every affected employee will have the opportunity to speak with someone to get their questions answered and join information sessions. Okay, fair enough. Some of the details in the US include severance, PTO, RSU vesting. RSUs are an award of stock shares, health insurance, career services, immigration support. So he goes on and details what they're going to do to take care of the people who are being laid off. And that's obviously something that you need to do as you are considering layoffs. If you are considering layoffs, is to work with your HR people and make sure that you are very clear on what exactly people are going to get as a result of the layoffs. They seem pretty generous to me, by the way, all the stuff that they're going to be providing. You need to make decisions for your company. Okay. Let's go on to another part of the letter here. Outside the US, support will be similar, and we'll follow up soon with separate processes that take into account local employment laws. We've made the decision to remove access to most meta systems for people leaving today, given the amount of access to sensitive information. But we're keeping email addresses active throughout the day so everyone can say farewell. So basically, you got a day to say goodbye via email. That's appropriate for Facebook simply because, they're a virtual-driven company in many cases. And you've got to make those decisions also when you're laying people off. What information are you going to cut off and when? And for most people, because there's tons of sensitive information that people have access to, you're just going to cut them off right away. Okay, back to the letter. While we're making reductions in every organization across both family of apps and reality labs, some teams will be affected more than others. Recruiting will be disproportionately affected since we're planning to hire fewer people next year. One of the great advantages, by the way, of these kinds of cuts and the downturn in the economy, and I know you will relate to this as a construction company owner, is you get to cut some of the deadwood. Okay, so we've got C players in the company. The economy is going down. I want to make sure I keep my A players, reserve that employee overhead for them. And so the C players and the B players, the C players are going to get cut. The B players are going to get challenged. Hey, if you want to stay on, you've got to step up your game. And the A players are going to be focused on, because we need to keep those folks in the company as we're going through a downturn to take care of the projects that we're currently building and that we may have in the hopper or in the backlog for the next few months. Okay. So it goes on here. We're also structuring our business teams more substantially. This is not a reflection of the great work these groups have done, but what we need going forward. The leaders of each group will schedule time to discuss what this means for your team over the next couple of days. The teammates who will be leaving us are talented and passionate and have made an important impact on our company and community. Each of you helped make Meta a success, and I'm grateful for it. I'm sure you'll go on to do great work at other places. This is kind of the first personal mention of the people leaving, and it's probably halfway through the letter. So that's kind of interesting. Okay, next part of the letter. What other changes are we making? I view layoffs as a last resort. So we decided to rein in other sources of cost before letting teammates go. Overall, this will add up to a meaningful cultural shift in how we operate. Now, that to me is one of the most interesting things in the letter, that he ties the layoffs and the overall changes that he's making in the organization to a cultural shift. And my thinking is that the culture of the company should remain the same, but that if you have to make changes to the way the company operates, that doesn't necessarily change the core of who you are. That's what I think of when the word culture comes up. And so it's interesting. Perhaps he's really taking a look at the way Facebook has run and the culture of the organization that has been perpetuated in the good times, and thinking that we need to fundamentally change the way we operate as a company. And so that's something you should consider as well, as you might be making shifts in the way that you do business as the economy goes up and down. What is the impact on the culture? Now, the culture of your company is a reflection of the people that you have in your organization. So obviously, as some people leave the organization, the culture may change. But I always think of a company having a core culture that is a reflection first of the people who own the business, and then that culture then cascades down throughout the business based on the other people who are in the organization. Okay, so now he's going to detail some of these cultural shifts. For example, as we shrink our real estate footprint, we're transitioning to desk sharing for people who already spend most of their time outside the office. We'll roll out more cost-cutting changes like this in the coming months. So notice how cost-cutting is linked to the cultural shift. And I think that's probably a reflection of the tech industry itself. My hope is that your culture is not something driven by how much money you're spending, but by who you are as people. And I think there's a distinction there that's very important. Okay, back to the letter. We're also extending our hiring freeze through Q1 with a small number of exceptions. I'm going to watch our business performance, operational efficiency, and other macroeconomic factors to determine whether and how much we should resume hiring at that point. So let me stop right here. He mentions three things here: business performance, operational efficiency, macroeconomic factors. He's going to be paying close attention to those. Now, my hope is that you, as a construction company owner or leader, are paying close attention to these all the time. Your business performance, for instance, when times are good, you may not be thinking much about your hit rate, because regardless of how efficient your hit rate is or how high your hit rate is, you're just getting projects coming in the door. But really, you should be paying close attention to that all the time. The same is true with operational efficiency. Every single week, every single month, you should be looking at, with all of your projects, for example, estimated versus actual costs. And if you're not doing that when times are tough, you will be forced to do that. When times are great, you will be forced to do that when times are tough. And then obviously you need to look at macroeconomic factors. Those are the things that are outside of your control, but they will have an impact upon your organization. And again, when times are going well, it's really easy to sort of pat yourself on the back and think that times will continue to go well. But you must focus in at all times on your business performance, on your operational efficiency, and macroeconomic factors. Okay. Back to the letter. This will give us the ability to control our cost structure in the event of a continued economic downturn. It will also put us on a path to achieve a more efficient cost structure than we outlined to investors recently. I'm currently in the middle of a thorough review of our infrastructure spending. As we build our AI infrastructure, we're focused on becoming even more efficient with our capacity. Our infrastructure will continue to be an important advantage for Meta, and I believe we can achieve this while spending less. Okay, so ask yourself the question, what can we achieve while spending less? And then however you answer that question, here's the secondary question. Is it possible to continue to spend less moving forward, even when things start to go well again, even when we come out of this downturn, however severe it may be? You should always be looking at your overhead. You should always be looking at your spending and doing your best to justify every single dollar that is going out the door. Now, you may be saying, Eric, come on, man, I've got other stuff to worry about. But I want to encourage you. You should focus on how much you're spending all of the time and make sure that your money is being allocated and your capital is being allocated in places that are going to help you to bid work, win work, build work, and get paid as efficiently as possible. Okay, back to the letter. Fundamentally, we're making all these changes for two reasons. Our revenue outlook is lower than we expected at the beginning of the year, and we want to make sure we're operating efficiently across both family of apps and Reality Labs. Okay, so what's driving these changes? There's less money coming in, and so we've got to figure out how to be more efficient. So before the less money starts coming in for you as a construction company owner, what can you do right now to figure out how you can become more efficient? All right, so back to the letter, last part of the letter. How do we move forward? This is a sad moment, and there's no way around that. To those who are leaving, I want to thank you again for everything you've put into this place. We would not be where we are today without your hard work, and I'm grateful for your contributions. To those who are staying, I know this is a difficult time for you too. Not only are we saying goodbye to people we've worked closely with, but many of you also feel uncertainty about the future. I want you to know that we're making these decisions to make sure our future is strong. I believe we are deeply underestimated as a company today. Very interesting, huh? Especially because they've been taking some hits lately and the stock price has been plummeting. Billions of people use our services to connect, and our communities keep growing. Our core business is among the most profitable ever built, with huge potential ahead. Again, let me just say this. What is their core business? I'm not an expert on Facebook, but from what I can tell, their core business is selling ads on Facebook. So one of the things that you have to be thinking through as a construction company owner is, what is my core business? Am I focused on that core business? And as the economy changes and perhaps the niche that you're in dries up a little bit, or the niches that you're in begin to shift in terms of volume, you have to be nimble. You have to be flexible. You have to be willing to take a step to the side of the niche you're in, perhaps to an adjacent niche, or take a look at the niche you're in and take a deeper dive into it to plumb the depths of it for work to keep your company moving forward, even in tough times. Okay, back to the letter. We're leading in developing the technology to define the future of social connection and the next computing platform. That's a reference to the metaverse. We do historically important work. Okay, whatever. I'm sorry, that's just my particular viewpoint on Facebook. It's kind of whatever. I'm confident that if we work efficiently, we'll come out of this downturn stronger and more resilient than ever. So, right again, efficiency. And this happens with all human beings, right? When things are going well, we tend to be less diligent, less disciplined, and as a result, less efficient. And what if we focused on efficiency at all times? What impact would that have on the organization? We'll share more on how we'll operate as a streamlined organization to achieve our priorities in the weeks ahead. For now, I'll say one more time how thankful I am to those of you who are leaving for everything you've done to advance our mission. That's kind of a passive way of ending it, right? Those of you who are leaving, right? They're not leaving, they're getting the boot, right? They're getting fired. Anyway, I think this is kind of a realistic letter in many ways. Zuckerberg is not super optimistic or rah-rah in the letter, and I think that's appropriate. It's an appropriate tone after letting go 11,000 people. What do you think? Feel free to give me a comment, leave a comment below this. Do you think this is a framework that can help you in terms of changes that you might need to make in your business currently to be as efficient as possible, to focus on your core business, to keep overhead low, to stop wasting money unnecessarily? I think a key part for me here, I think this is really, really, really important. Focus on your business performance, focus on operational efficiency, and keep macroeconomic factors in mind. And if you do have to do layoffs, whether it's through a massive letter like this or whether it's a personal conversation, make sure you're taking responsibility, because you are responsible for your business, for good or for ill, and outline to people, how did we get here? How will this work? What other changes are we making? How do we move forward? All right. Appreciate you watching. Thanks very much.